ASMR book reading. ASMR in English. Author is Charles Kenneth Scott Moncrief. The book's name is Swann'S Overture. In English. For a long time, I used to go to bed early. Sometimes, when I had put out my candle, my eyes would close so quickly that I had not even time to say, I'm going to sleep. And I'll find out later the thought that it was time to go to sleep would awaken me. I would try to put away the book which I imagined was still in my hands, and to blow out the light. I had been thinking all the time while I was asleep of what I had just been reading. But my thoughts had run into a channel of their own until I myself seemed actually to have become the subject of my book. A church, a quartet, a rivalry between Franz First and Charles V. This impression would persist for some moments after I was awake. It did not disturb my mind, but it lay like scales upon my eyes and prevented them from registering the fact that the candle was no longer burning. Then it would begin to seem unintelligible, as the thoughts of a former existence must be to a reincarnate spirit. The subject of my romance separated itself from me, leaving me free to choose whether I would form part of it or not, and at the same time my sight would return, and I would be astonished to find myself in a state of darkness, pleasant and restful enough for the eyes, and even more, perhaps, for my mind, to which it appeared incomprehensible, without a cause, a matter dark indeed. I would ask myself what o'clock it could be. I could hear the whistling of trains, which now nearer and now farther off, punctuating the distance like the note of a bird in a forest, showed me in perspective the deserted countryside through which a traveler would be hurrying towards the nearest station. The path that he followed being fixed forever in his memory by the general excitement to being in a strange place, to doing unusual things, to the last words of conversation, to farewells exchanged beneath an unfamiliar lamp, which echoed still in his ears amid the silence of the night, and to the delightful prospect of being once again at home. I would lay my cheeks gently against the comfortable cheeks of my pillow, as plump and blooming as the cheeks of babyhood, for I would strike a match to look at my watch, nearly midnight, the hour when an invalid who has been obliged to start on a journey and to skip in a strange hotel awakens in a moment of illness, and sees with glad relief a streak of daylight issuing under his bedroom door. Oh, joy of joys! It is morning. The servants will be about in it is morning. He can ring and someone will come to look after him. The thought of being made comfortable gives him strength to endure his pain. He is certain he heard footsteps. They come nearer and then die away. The ray of light beneath his door is extinguished. It is midnight. Someone has turned out the gas. The last servant has gone to bed, and he must lie all night in agony with no one to bring any help. I would fall asleep as often. I would be awake again for short snatches on the gas, just long enough to hear the regular breaking of the wainscot, or to open my eyes to settle in the shifting kaleidoscope of the darkness, to savor in an instantaneous flash of perception the sleep which lay heavy upon the furniture, the room, the whole surroundings of which I formed but an insignificant part, and whose unconsciousness I should perish soon, return to share. Or perhaps while I was asleep, I had returned without the least effort to an earlier stage in my life, now forever outgrown, and had come under the thrall of one of my childish terrors, such as that old terror of my great uncle's pulling my curls, which was effectually dispelled on the day, the dawn of a new era to me, on which they were finally dropped, though I had forgotten that event during my sleep. I remembered it again immediately. I had succeeded in making myself wake up to escape my great uncle's fingers, still as a measure of precaution. I would bury the whole of my head in the pillow before returning to the doctrine of that event during my sleep. I remembered it again immediately. I had succeeded in making myself wake up. Sometimes too, just as Eve was created from a rib of Adam. So a woman would come into existence while I was sleeping, conceived from some strain in the position of my limbs, formed by the appetite that I was on the point of gratifying. She it was, I imagined, who offered me that gratification. My body, conscious that its own warmth was permitting hers, would strive to become one with her, and I would awaken. The rest of humanity seemed very remote in comparison with this woman, whose company I had left but a moment ago. My cheek was still warm with her kiss, my body bent beneath the weight of her become one. If, as would sometimes happen, she had the appearance of some woman whom I had known in waking hours, I would abandon myself altogether to the sole quest of her. If, as would sometimes happen, she had the appearance of some, like people who set out on a journey to see with their own eyes some city that they have always longed to visit, and imagine that When a man is asleep, he has in a circle around him the chain of the hours and the sequence of them. Here's the order of the heavenly host. Instinctively, when he awakes, he looks to these, and in an instant reads of his own position on the earth's surface and the amount of time that has elapsed during his slumbers. But this ordered procession is apt to grow confused and to break its ranks. Suppose that, towards morning, after a night of insomnia, sleep descends upon him while he is reading, in quite a different position from that in which he normally goes to sleep. He has only to lift his arm to arrest the sun and turn it back in its course, and at the moment of waking he will have no idea of the time, but will conclude that he has just gone to bed, or suppose that he gets drowsy in some even more abnormal position, sitting in an armchair, say after dinner, then the world will fall topsy-turvy from its orbit. The magic chair will carry him at full speed through time and space, and when he opens his eyes again, he will imagine that he went to sleep months earlier and in some far distant country. But for me it was enough if in my own bed my sleep was so heavy as completely to relax my consciousness, for then I lost all sense of the place in which I had gone to sleep, and when I awoke at midnight, not knowing where I was, I could not be sure at first where me I had only the most rudimentary sense of existence, such as may lurk and flicker in the depths of an animal's consciousness. I was more destitute of human qualities than the cave dwellers, but then the memory not yet of the place in which I was, but of various other places where I had lived and might now, but very possibly be, would come like a rope let down from heaven to draw me up out of the abyss of not being, from which I then never have escaped by myself. But in a flash I would traverse and surmount the centuries of civilization, and out of a half-visualized succession of wild flaps, followed by shirts with turned-down collars, would put together by degrees the component parts of my ego. Perhaps the immobility of the things that surround us is forced upon them by our conviction that they are themselves and not anything else, and by the immobility of our conceptions of them. For it always happened that when I awoke like this, and my mind struggled in an unsuccessful attempt to discover where I was, everything would be moving round me through the darkness, things, places, years. My body still too heavy with sleep to move. I'll make an effort to constitute the form which its tiredness took as an orientation of its various members, so as to induce from that where the wall lay and the furniture stood, to piece together and to give a name to the house in which it must be living. Its memory, the composite memory of its ribs, knees, and shoulder blades, offered it a whole series of rooms in which it had at one time or another slept, while the unseen walls kept changing at one time or another slept living, adapting themselves to the shape of each successive room that it remembered, whirling madly through the darkness, and even before my brain, lingering in consideration of when things had happened and of what they had looked like, had collected sufficient impressions to enable it to identify the room Yet my body would recall from each room in succession what the bed was like, where the doors were, how daylight came in, at the windows where there was a passage outside, what I had had in my mind when I went to sleep and had found there when I, in my body, would recall from each room